Ah, the PlayStation Classic. What a whirlwind of emotions this system has caused me. When it was first unveiled, I was initially very excited for it. I remember being like, wow, this looks so cool. A plug-and-play PlayStation console that I could play on my HD television with a bunch of classic PS1 games. This sounds like a match made in heaven, but pretty much everything after the initial unveiling of the system just put a sour taste in my mouth. The game lineup was questionable to say the least. We then got information that the system was running PAL versions of some of these ISOs, which would make the games run slower. And of course, the interface of the system was just ugly. There was nothing really charming about the PlayStation Classic. We reviewed the PlayStation Classic a couple days ago on the channel, and honestly, it was just absolute trash. It doesn't run the games right. It doesn't look good. There's no sort of flair. There's no sort of fun to the system. But of course, the one silver lining with the PlayStation Classic was the fact that more than likely, this system would be hacked. And there's been a lot of information coming out over the past couple days of hacking of the PlayStation Classic that some of it just makes me scratch my head. Some of it makes me angry, and some of it makes me hopeful for the future. So in today's video, we're going to talk about 3 instances of hacking the PlayStation Classic that are really making progress and really making things interesting for the future of the PlayStation Classic. So sit back, relax, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and let's talk about all of the hacking going on with the PlayStation Classic.
Hey, RGT 85. Hey, Sean.
Oh my God, it's Stevie Richards! So the first discovery was done by my buddies at Retro Gaming Arts. I've known these dudes for over a year now, and they're really solid dudes. They run a YouTube channel, they have a console modding business. Make sure you guys go check out their YouTube channel. I'm gonna have a link in the description box down below to the initial video. Get them some love, hit them with a subscription, and tell them that RGT sent you. But they were playing around with the PlayStation Classic, and they came across a very interesting discovery. They simply plugged in a USB keyboard into the PlayStation Classic and pressed escape. And by doing that, they were able to access the emulator settings for the PlayStation Classic. You have to remember the emulator in the PlayStation Classic is PCXX Rearmed, which is an open source emulator that has been around for quite a while. So the fact that you couldn't do things like add scan lines, change things, add borders to your game seemed really weird considering this was an open source emulator that has been around forever. But when you do this, when you plug in a USB keyboard into your PlayStation Classic and hit the escape button, you now have access to the PlayStation Classic's emulator settings. You could change things like add scan lines to a game, have more save files, and even change the game's region to make it run properly. So what the hell is this? Like, Sony knew all along that you could access the emulator settings in this. It is an open source emulator. So that means that anyone could have been able to access these things and add things like scan lines to make the games look more like they did back in the day, to add things like sharpening filters, to add things like frame rate skips so that the games run smoother, and of course change the region of these games so that they run proper. Like, how half-assed was Sony with this system? They literally did nothing. They did the absolute bare minimum, and now it really shows because the emulator settings can be accessed by anyone. So if you simply plug in a USB keyboard into your PlayStation Classic, hit the escape button, you are then entered into the menu system. Now, it is a little bit buggy. Sometimes it will cause games to crash, so use it at your own discretion, but still, this is huge. Like, if these built-in emulator settings were so easily accessible, why couldn't you have made it that if you press start and select at the same time, I could have brought up this menu so that I can change things around and make it more tailored suited to my gaming needs? It's just so crazy because the whole point of emulation is to improve upon games and to make these games run and look better in the modern era than they did back in the day. That's why they do things like emulators. That's why emulators are so popular. So the fact that Sony knew that this was in there and it was very easily accessible, but chose to not use this and chose to not let people access the menu settings right out of the box without actually having to mess around with the system is just disgusting. Now, the next story is even crazier because it looks like there were 36 additional games that were rejected for the PlayStation Classic. Some data miners found concrete information that 36 additional games were tested on the PlayStation Classic by Sony. Some people think that the games may still be on the system. I honestly don't, just because of the storage size and the storage medium of the system. But it's interesting that these games were on the system at one point in time, tested on the system, but then rejected. Because when you look at this lineup of games, it's much better than the lineup we got. So here are the 36 games that were rejected for the PlayStation Classic. Chocobo's Mystery Dungeon, Colin McRae Rally, Crash Bandicoot 2, Toy Story 2, Driver, Guys Bless the Ring, Fighting Force, Gran Turismo, Grand Theft Auto 2, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, Kagero, Klonoa, Kula World, Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver, Medal of Honor, Medieval, Mega Man Legends, Mr. Driller G, Paka Paka Passion, Parappa the Rappa, Parasite Eve, Raystorm, Ridge Racer the Original, Silent Hill, Spec Ops Stealth Patrol, Street Fighter Alpha 3, Street Fighter EX Plus Alpha, Suikoden, Tomb Raider, Tomb Raider 2, Toomba, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, Vagrant Story, Wild Arms 2, and Xevious 3D G+. What in the hell are you doing, Sony? So one of the big problems with the PlayStation Classic was obviously the game lineup. People wanted games like Crash Bandicoot, Parappa the Rappa. They wanted games like Tomb Raider, you know, the iconic PS1 games. So the fact that these games were running on the system, the fact that you tested these games, showed that there was a plan to at least put these games on the system. Now, looking at this list, you see games like Gran Turismo and Harry Potter. So obviously there would be some licensing issues with things like this. But the fact that Parasite Eve was on the original North American system, you know, the Parasite Eve, which came out on the Japanese PlayStation Classic, but not on the North American Classic system. Mega Man Legends, Klonoa, you know, 2D games. Where are all the 2D games? The only 2D game you really have on the system is Rayman, which is one of the best running games on the system. Toomba, like, this lineup would have been so much better. Do you think people are out there wanting to play Rainbow Six on the PlayStation Classic? I assure you that nobody right now in anywhere in the world that purchased a PlayStation Classic is sitting there playing Rainbow Six on the PlayStation Classic, because nobody wants to play that. People want to play these games. So the fact that you had these games on there, the fact that you had intentions of putting them on there, and then we ended up with the paltry lineup of games that we ended up getting with the PlayStation Classic is just disgusting. Like, it's so lazy. This whole system just screams laziness. Now, the big discovery that has been made, of course, is the ability to put different ISOs on the PlayStation Classic. Now, there is a video floating around on Twitter from a Twitter user called Boki Kozo, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that, but Boki Kozo actually has a video up showing a loading of a different ISO on the PlayStation Classic. Now you can see that he has his computer hooked up to it, so it's probably not, you know, native right now, but you can see on the screen that he has Armored Core on there, and then he runs, he says some stuff, and then he runs a basic game on here from Konami. I'm not quite sure what game that is. I'm not really familiar with that game, but in the translated tweet that he made, a very rough translation, I actually made the image file of the game and tried to load it. I don't see the place where I'm stabbing, but I read it from USB memory. It's completely manually now, but can be properly incorporated if you do well. PlayStation Classic hack done. Play so far. Cha-ching. Back to work. So obviously, this is a huge step for the PlayStation Classic. What I'm gathering is that although he is running it via a computer and not native on the PlayStation Classic right now, that he feels that there will be the ability to run it natively on the PlayStation Classic. You can see that Armored Core was on there as well. I'm not sure if Armored Core was a PS1 release for the PlayStation Classic in Japan or whatever region this gentleman is in, but obviously you can see that another game has been loaded on here. A game that is not on the PlayStation Classic is now on the PlayStation Classic. So when you factor in the fact that Sony knew that emulator settings were built in on the system, that all you had to do was simply take a USB keyboard, plug it into the system, and hit escape and get this menu settings. The fact that Sony tried out 37 different games on the system, games that people wanted, games like Crash Bandicoot, Tomb Raider, Gran Turismo, Toomba, games that people were excited for to be on the PlayStation Classic, just shows how lazy Sony was with this system. It looks like this system isn't selling very well, and honestly, I can't say that I'm very surprised by this. But these hacks and things that are going on with the system are definitely awesome, because I feel like the hacking community and the modding community is what's going to save the PlayStation Classic. A lot of people have bought the PlayStation Classic, and I would say most of them are probably pretty disappointed with the final product. But a lot of us have the ability to hack things and are able to run programs and able to add things to the PlayStation Classic. So I think this will be a good thing in the long run. I'm definitely excited that just in a matter of a couple days, all of this information has been discovered and all of this progress has been made, when simply this stuff should have been available right out of the gate. Things like the ability to access the emulator settings, this should have been available out of the gate. But hackers are doing what Sony didn't. Hackers are making the PlayStation Classic actually worth checking out if you are into modding and things like that. Or I guess you could technically just get a RetroPie. That's the one and only time I will ever say that on this channel. But let me know in the comment section down below what you think of the progress made with hacking the PlayStation Classic. Are you excited for it? Did you even bother picking up a PlayStation Classic? And like I said, make sure you check out my buddies at Retro Gaming Arts. Go subscribe to their channel. Go show them some love in the comment section of that video. They did awesome work. They got on like IGN, Polygon, Kotaku. Every big website was talking about them. So I figured I would throw them some love too. Tell them that RGT sent you. And of course, thank you for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Make sure you check out my PlayStation Classic review where I was just absolutely disgusted and disappointed with the system. And as always, I will catch you guys on the next video. Later.